Hello, I'm Liselle Sambury, and welcome to the final episode of Debut Diaries. If you haven't been following this series, this is a series that I started to talk about my experiences being a debut author in traditional publishing. My novel Blood Like Magic came out this year, and it was all about those experiences. I have a playlist over here that I will link to. As of this episode, I believe it has 18 episodes on it, and I talk about all sorts of things from the cover reveal process to marketing, pre-pub and post-pub, to debut groups, to all sorts of things about debut year. So definitely check that out if you would like. And I put out a poll on my community tab about what you wanted this final episode to be. And so as per the title, I am going to do the 10 best and worst parts about debut year, but I'm also going to add a section to talk about debut wins, so things that went well for me this year, just some of the highlights. And I'm also going to have a section at the end of a reflection of debut year as a whole. So I will have timestamps below so you can hop around if you want, but people seem to overwhelmingly want a little bit of everything, so I decided to combine those all into this episode because it's the final episode, so I wanted to do all of those things. So let's go ahead and get started with the 10 best and worst. The way I'm going to be doing this is I'm going to be sharing 5 of the best things about debut year and 5 of the worst things about debut year. I'll do one each in pairs for a total of 10, because if I did 10 each, we would be here forever and this would be the longest video, and I don't want to do that. So we're going to start with those. So the first pair being these are in no particular order, but the starting pair. So best thing about debut year, finally having your book come out. I feel like this is very obvious, but it's super exciting to finally have your book come out, to have your book on bookshelves, to have it out in the world for people and have your big launch, whatever it is that you decide to do on that day. But it's just, for, some people, and certainly for me, it was a dream that I had for a very large chunk of my life, over half of my life, to be a published author. And so it's a literal dream coming true to see my book get published. And it's just like a fantastic, amazing experience. And of course, it's only going to happen once because you're only going to publish your first book once. So it was a really, really exciting time and definitely a best part of debut year. On the flip side, a worst bit is on the marketing side, not knowing what sort of marketing support you are going to get from your publisher. This is something that I struggled with because for most of my debut process, I didn't get my marketing plan until kind of a later stage in the game. So I wasn't really sure what my publisher was going to be doing to promote the book. If I was going to get a good amount of promotion, if I was going to get no promotion, if I was going to get, a mix of in between. I had no idea what they would be doing on their end. And then after I got the marketing plan, the thing about publishing and marketing plans is promises can be broken. So the marketing plan is not a contract. It is not a guarantee. It is what your publisher plans to do for you. So just because something is in the marketing plan does not 100% mean that it will happen. Things change, things shift within publishing. And so then that became a new anxiety of like, okay, of these things that they said they would do, how many of these are actually going to come into fruition? And part of that is also, working with a publisher for the first time. You're not really sure how things are going to go necessarily, especially because each author has such a different experience. So that anxiety of wondering what was going to be done, because I know the publisher end of marketing is an enormous part of the book's success, that was an anxiety. And so having that stress was a not so fun part of debut year. The next best and worst pair is, starting with the best, getting to hear from readers. It's really, really exciting to hear from the general population who has read the book, because during the publishing debut process, there's such a limited pool of people reading your book. So in my case, I had beta readers that read the book. I was in a Rev Pit, which is a contest. So my editor there was reading the book, and editor slash mentor, and then my agent was reading the book, and then my editor was reading the book, and then potentially other people at the publisher, but I wasn't really necessarily privy to who that was, or like who was or wasn't reading it at the publisher. So to me, it was a very small pool of people. And then even once ARCs came out, advanced reader copies, and a larger amount of people were able to read it, it still didn't feel like a huge amount of people, because it's, you know, whoever is interested and whoever can get access to the ARC are the people who are reading it, which is still like a relatively small pool of people. And so it's really exciting to get opinions just from a random person that like went into the bookstore, went into their library and saw the book and was like, that seems interesting, and read it and loved it, and like tagged me in their post saying how much they loved it. Like, that's so exciting, because I'm like, you really had no reason to read it necessarily. Like, you know, you're publishing it, you were, you know, reading it as part of like, you know, the publisher sent this to me, so yeah, I'll read it. Like, just out of nothing. And that was really exciting to hear from those readers. And I got, you know, an opportunity in which I also heard from someone who worked with teens about like their opinions on the book and how much they had enjoyed it, which was really exciting, because of course I wrote Blood Like Magic for teenagers to read, and so it's really exciting for that as well. And then on the flip side, the worst bit, hearing from readers. Okay, it's like a semi-joke, but it's semi-real. And this is really in regards to being tagged in negative reviews, or reviews that seem positive, but then have a little negative edge to them. That's kind of the flip side. And I've talked about in other videos how this is something that I had struggled with, because it's one thing to like conceptually know that not everybody's going to like your book, and it's quite another to like have like negative criticism like shoved at you. Yeah, so that was something I struggled with. And I posted about this on my Instagram story, but I had a thought recently about this that really has kind of helped change my perspective. And it's me being like, you know, my book is not a small book. It's 496 pages. It is a tome. And if someone took the time to read that, they took hours out of their day to read that, even if in the end they didn't like it, I'm just like, they still read it. Like, they still gave me a large amount of their personal time that they could have spent doing anything reading my book. And of course, I'm not going to respond to people, but like for me internally, it makes me feel better to just be like, you know what? Thanks for your time. Thanks for the memories. It's cool, and to move on. And somehow that has shifted something in my mind, which has made it better, but I'm keeping it on the worst list because this was something I struggled to get used to throughout debut year. The next best and worst pair. So the best part is learning new things about publishing. I don't know if I'm just kind of a bit of a publishing nerd, but I think it's so exciting to learn things about the publishing process. And there are so many different things that came up that I learned. Like, I learned about, you know, doing copy edits and doing past pages. I just learned about, you know, publicity things as they came up, foreign rights things as they came up. There were things that like I became involved in that I then got to learn more about the behind the scenes process of, and just even being in the debut group and being part of that community of authors, getting to hear about everyone's different experiences and like getting to learn a lot of different things. And I think that's really fun. Like, I think that's so exciting. That's something I've always really loved about the Authortube community, is learning those things from other Authortubers, like Alexa Dunn and Michelle Schusterman, who have traditional publishing experiences that I don't have, or like have more information. And I always love like the deep dive videos that they do, and I'll link both their channels below, because I just think that's so exciting to learn about publishing. So that was really fun for me. And then on the flip side, the worst one, these aren't necessarily things that go together. I'm just pairing them so that I can go back and forth. But the worst on the flip side has been the comparison game. So it's just, I feel like this is very natural in publishing as a whole, but like in debut year, when you're like doing it for the first time, at least for me, you are going to play a bit of a comparison game. So, you know, I noticed that there were things that some debuts got that I didn't get. I noticed, you know, oh wow, like look at all these accolades that this debut author and their book are getting, and I'm not really getting those with my book. And so there were those sorts of things where like I would notice when someone was achieving something and I was like, oh, whoa, I don't have that happening for me. But for me, thankfully, this lasted like usually a very short time. Like I would be like womp womp for like a few seconds and then I would kind of get over it. So thankfully I didn't wallow in that feeling. I think what helped is that I did have a lot of great things happening for me. So it helped with like mitigating feelings of like, oh, I wish I had that, because I did achieve a lot of things as well. And also like a lot of the good things that were happening to friends. And so me being happy for them really eclipsed any feelings of like, you know, sadness over those not being things that happened for me. But naturally, playing the comparison game is something that did happen during debut year, and that wasn't a fun part of debut year for me. Pair number 4, if you've been keeping count, because I had not. But the best bit, seeing your book celebrated in any way. Like for me, like whether I see my book on like a display table in a bookstore, whether someone has like highlighted it in a TikTok or an Instagram post, whether I'm in a best of list or like being nominated for awards, like all of those things are so exciting for me. I think, you know, having worked on the book for so long and like putting in so much hard work and dedication, it's really validating to see the book being celebrated and to see my work being celebrated in that way. It's really exciting, and I know that doesn't happen for everyone, and so it was just like such a wonderful experience. Anytime I saw that, I get so excited. Even just like people taking pictures of my book in the bookstore on the shelves, like that's still exciting, because like there's no guarantee that your book will be in a bunch of bookstores. You know, like it could be in some bookstores, it could not be in a bunch of bookstores. And so for me, like that's still like an exciting celebration, and that makes me really happy. So that's been like an absolute wonderful part of the debut year experience. And the flip side, worst part, the debut lull. So I don't know if everyone experiences this, though I have heard some other debut authors talk about this, but you know, there's such a lead up to your debut and to your novel coming out. And so there's so many things that can be happening on the lead up to your debut, and then your book comes out. And then what happens after? And I actually did make an entire Debut Diaries video, which I will post over here, about what to do next after your book comes out. But it was a struggle for me in that initial period of figuring out what I should be doing, and like, okay, what do I do now that my book was out? And some of my solutions for that were that I was fortunate to have certain events booked after my book came out to like, you know, pull me forward. And that's been exciting. But it definitely felt like there was a marked decrease, I guess, in visibility of my book after it came out, because there's such a lead up hype to that launch date. And so that was kind of for a moment the worst, because I was like, what do I do? Like, should I be doing something? Is it okay? Am I suddenly going to be forgotten about? Or like, is everything fine and I'm just freaking out for no reason? And so that was a difficult bit of it for me, for sure, was kind of deciding what I was going to do in that time and feeling anxious about like, if like my book was suddenly going to drop off the face of the earth because now we were past launch date. Especially in a case in which you know, I wasn't sure that I was going to have a bunch of buzz propelling me forward. So, you know, for some people, after their debut comes out, you know, they'll like hit the New York Times bestseller list, or they'll hit the indie bestseller list, or they'll become a Reese's book club pick, and that attention like propels them forward. And so there's this increasing amount of accolades that then, you know, continue to garner buzz for their book and like keep that momentum going. But as like a mid-list author, I wasn't really sure that that was necessarily going to be something that would happen for me. And so, well, certainly I had zero expectation of being on any bestseller list, but beyond that, I wasn't sure what may or may not come up in order to propel me forward. And so that was why that was such a, like, I think a momentary anxiety. I think at the time it felt like very long, but like if I look back for it, I was stressed about that for like a week. Tops. But yeah, it was a difficult sort of period to figure out what I was going to do and to navigate and to have those sorts of feelings. And the final best and worst pair. So for this, the best one is getting to talk about my book in depth with other people. So in the lead up to my book coming out, mostly people that I was speaking to hadn't had a chance to read the book yet. And so we were talking, you know, about my journey as an author and like the book in general terms and things like that. But it's so exciting to talk with people who have like read the book and like experienced the characters and like to hear like who their favorite characters were and who their least favorite characters were, which like the least favorite characters, there are characters that are supposed to be disliked. And so for me, like that's, you know, I like that, but I also find it's interesting to see which characters they were like, oh my gosh, like this character, like these things that they did annoyed me and things like that, because usually the things that annoyed them are things that are supposed to annoy them. And so it's just really exciting. It's like being in like a book club for your favorite book, but it's your book. Because, you know, even though I cannot read my book again, I cannot read it again. I do love it, and I do get really excited to talk about everything that's happening in it. And so it's like really fun and exciting to get to talk to people that have actually read it in depth. Because you can talk about so many different things and like all the stuff that's going on, and like I put a lot of twists in this book, and it's really exciting to get to talk about the twists with people. So that's really, really fun. I find that to be like such a fun part of debut year, and I know this can generally apply to a book coming out at any time, but that's been a really great part of debut year for me. And the flip side worst bit is discovering whether or not you have been successful at what you've done during debut year. This has been kind of difficult for me because for me with the first week sales, my publisher did, you know, check in about first week sales and be like, yeah, everybody's happy with that. My agent had talked about, you know, some comparison sales statistics for first week sales, so I could have an idea of like how things went in the first week, which was like, yay, thumbs up. But then more time passes and you're like, well, what about after the first week? And that's quite a bit more complicated. So I chatted with my agent about this, and she was like, you kind of really aren't going to really know until a year out how well the book has done overall. And so for me, that was kind of a difficult bit of like gauging success just based on like what have you. For me in general, I did feel like the book did successful, but I did have a period of time, I feel like around the 3-month mark, where I like had no idea what was going on, and I was like, am I doing good, or am I doing bad, or like how is the book doing? And it matters because how your book does will inform, you know, book deals going forward. You will have a sales record. People will look at your sales record. And especially for me as an author who is interested in doing spin-off series for this book, you know, I wanted the series to do well, because if the series does well, then maybe that increases my chances of, you know, selling a spin-off series and getting to do more in this world. But it was really difficult to tell. I was like, I have no idea what these sales are and if these sales are good or not. And I really had to like chat with other authors and that sort of thing to get a better pulse on like long-term things. But that was kind of a worse part, because I was like in a glass case of emotion, having no real idea how things were going and being like, so I know at the very beginning how I've done, I know a year later how I've done, and it's just a big gap. But eventually I did get over that and it was fine. So a note on these like worst parts of debut year, they're really not that bad. They're really just things that like at some point during debut year I struggled with, and so I feel like it's relevant to mention them. But I will say that for the most part, the positive things and the happy things of debut year really did outweigh the negative things. But I know that it's interesting for people to kind of hear of like the things that are really good, but also hear about the things that are not so good, to kind of create that more well-rounded experience or feeling of like, okay, this is like one person's experience, so you can kind of get an idea. So that's what I hope that it did. So that's it for the 10 best and worst parts of debut year. And now I'm going to get into talking about debut year wins, and then we'll have a reflection at the end. And again, there are timestamps for all of these. Now we're on to the debut year wins. So I kept track of wins during the year. So just like positive things that happened during debut year, just so I could look back on them, so that if I had a day where I was being like, woe is me, nothing good is happening to me, my book sucks, nobody cares about me, I could look back at the wins and I could be like, what are you talking about? Last week, this amazing thing happened to you. So like, shut up. So that's why I had that there. And I also really like looking back on it because it can, you know, create a wider breadth of, you know, it can create a better idea of all the things I've accomplished throughout the year, because I feel like sometimes it can be easy to forget as time passes. And so I really liked having that catalog, and it was all sorts of things. Like, it didn't necessarily have to be like I won an award, and it didn't necessarily have to be about my debut Blood Like Magic. It was just like things that happened in that year. So like I have on there finishing copy edits for Blood Like Fate, which is something I was always going to do because I was contractually obligated, but I was proud of myself for finishing it, so I put it in those wins. So right now what I'm going to do is I'm going to read out some of the really exciting ones. This isn't all of them because we would be here, like I put down a lot of stuff. So this is just like some really big highlights of debut year. So I'm just gonna go through them. I hope swiftly, but we'll see. So I have my iPad here because I don't trust myself to remember. So being invited to Montreal Yeah Fest, Fold Kids Fest, and Infusion YA Fest, and all of the panels, honestly, that I was invited to in general was really exciting. I was really happy to be invited to those events. There was no really guarantee going into debut year that that would happen for me, and they were all really exciting and fun. So I was really happy about those. Being on the Write or Die podcast. Write or Die is like my favorite podcast, and Clarabelle and Kat are such wonderful authors and people. They've done such great things for the writing community, and I really admire them, and I love their podcast, so I was really excited to be a guest. And I'll link below if you want to listen to the episode that I was on. Listening to my audiobook. My audiobook was narrated by Jonice Abbott Pratt, and she did a fantastic job, and it was just like so amazing to listen to, and I wasn't sure for a long time if I was going to even get an audiobook. So it was so exciting to just like hear the characters come to life and the voices. It's really, really exciting. I absolutely loved listening to the audiobook. And again, I can't read my book anymore, but I like listened to a very large chunk of the audiobook because it was just like so exciting to hear that narration, hear the story come to life in that way. And then getting blurbs from Tracy Dion and Aiden Thomas. I was so appreciative of their blurbs, and like I admire both of those authors a lot. I love their books. I was just like so excited about it. And blurbs was like a stressful part of the process for me. I didn't put it in worst because the end result was really amazing, but it was a really stressful part of the process for me because I was like, oh my gosh, I have to ask people, and like, what if they say no, and I know it's fine that they say no, but I'm still panicked about it. And like, what if I don't get any blurbs? And like, it's totally fine to not have blurbs. I know so many books that did amazing that came out that did not have blurbs on their covers, and it was fine. I don't know why, like, I feel like this is a common debut author thing to like obsess about blurbs. And like, we're really obsessed about that, but so many other people, part of the publishing process, don't care. So yeah, that was another thing. My dog was very noisily licking herself, and I told her to stop, and now she's very upset with me and she's leaving the room, which is probably for the best for both of us. And then also being a Junior Library Guild pick, an Amazon pick, an Indigo monthly pick, being nominated for the Governor General Award and the White Pine Award, and being an Indigo top 10 teen books of the year. Those were like all things that I did not ever expect to be happening for my book, and those are all so exciting and amazing. Like the Governor General is a big deal in Canada, and the White Pine Award, with it, like after they pick the finalists, the kids and teens read all the books and they vote on them. And I remember being in school and like that being a thing that came up, and like now being like, oh, my book is like a part of that program, and just like really amazing accolades that I'm really appreciative of having happen for my book. And being on a panel with Leigh Bardugo was really, really exciting. My publisher booked me on a panel for the Texas Library Association, and I didn't really know who was going to be on the panel, and then I popped up, and then like Leigh Bardugo's face popped up to mine, and I was like, which I like tried very hard to hold in on camera because I didn't want to look ridiculous, but like I was so excited. Leigh Bardugo is like one of my favorite authors. I love the Grishaverse. Ninth House, like I could sit at the, I could kneel at the altar of Ninth House. Like, I absolutely love it. And the Shadow and Bone series, I have a Shadow and Bone poster on my wall. Like, I was so excited. I was so excited. And there were so many amazing authors on that panel. It was honestly like very star-studded, and I was like, I'm here. It was, yeah, that was wild, and that was really exciting for me. And then also getting 3-starred reviews. So I, in my little author heart, did really hope that I would get a starred review. This is one of like the few accolades that I was like, maybe I could do it. And I had a lot of hope for myself. And then when I got that first starred review, I was like, yay! Like, I was excited. I was happy. I was totally good with that. And to have 3-starred reviews come through was just like beyond expectation. I was so excited for that. It was really, really wonderful. I was super excited about that. And then selling Russian rights. I did really want to sell foreign rights, and so it was really exciting to be able to sell those. And I also didn't talk about this on the channel, but I did sign with a film agent. I'm signed with Dana Spector at CAA. I didn't talk about it on the channel because I didn't know what else to say other than that. Yeah, so I just like wasn't sure what else to say except for I've signed with a film agent, and it didn't really seem like a thing to make a whole video about. But that's really, really exciting. I'm so super jazzed to have her like championing my works. There's no additional news other than that, but that was really exciting. And that was something, you know, my agent had been shopping my work to film agents since before we even went on sub with Blood Like Magic. So that was like a huge win for me to get a film agent. So that was really exciting. And finally, but not leastly, last but not least, that's the phrase, being on TV. So CTV Northern Ontario did an interview with me, and I don't have cable, so I couldn't watch it live on TV. But like, you know, there were other people in our community that we know that watched it, that were really excited about it. And that was absolutely wonderful. And that was an opportunity that came out of Blood Like Magic being nominated for the Governor General Award. So that was really exciting. So those were just like some of the wins that I experienced, and it's really exciting for me because, you know, during debut year I was like, there's probably gonna be like at least 1 month where like nothing happens where I like don't have a win to record, and that's fine because I can look back on the months that I did. But I truly like every month I had something to celebrate. And even this month in December where I was like, everything is done, publishing is shut down, we're moving on to the next year. You know, exciting things also happen that I cannot talk about. So it was really, really good for me. And I will use this to segue right into the reflection. I will start by saying that my debut year was very unexpected. And some of those ways were positive and some of those ways were negative, but like overall, I feel like that is the best descriptor I can use for it, is unexpected. I did not expect to be debuting during a Panini. I did not expect my book to be nominated for awards. You know, there were so many things I didn't expect that happened, but I will say that overwhelmingly, the unexpected things were positive. I had an overwhelmingly really positive debut experience, and I had a debut experience that I felt was better than I could have ever expected, for sure. Did I want to debut during a Panini, during a pepperoni pizza pie? I did not. I did not want that. I went all the way until like October of 2020 thinking maybe it'll be over by 2021, and that absolutely, like, by the time we got, you know, by October, I was like, no, this isn't done. This isn't anywhere near over. And I'm going to be releasing my book during a pandemic. You know, on my release day where I live, we were in lockdown. I couldn't even go to the bookstore to see my book. I couldn't do those signing things. I did have an online launch, which was great. But it wasn't what I thought it would look like. But at the same time, so many more amazing, positive, happy things happened. And I think that's made a huge difference for me because, you know, those things of like an in-person launch and like going to see my book at the bookstore the day of, those are things I wanted, but I feel like the amount of amazing things that happened really made up for that. You know, there are so many wonderful things. And sometimes I feel like a broken record on this channel, or I feel like I'm like overly positive. But it really just like all of the good things truly did eclipse the bad things. Did I have down moments? Absolutely. I got tagged in like a horrible review that just like shredded my book into pieces. For what? I felt really bad about that. That made me feel super like shit. It wasn't fun. You know, that was a difficult moment for me. I had times where I was like, oh, my book is terrible and like I don't know what to do about it and it's already gonna go out and I just can't do anything about it. I had times where I thought, wow, absolutely no one gives a shit about my book. It's just going to fall into nothingness and disappear. I had times where I felt like, wow, like, am I not like as worthy as an author as other authors? Is that why certain things aren't happening for me? I had moments where I was really like, I felt shitty about things, you know, and I've talked about this briefly before, but I really wanted my book to sell in the UK, and that is not something that happened for me. And I was sad about that for a good chunk of time. And yeah, you know, there were things that did not happen for me. There were things that were sad about debut year, but also like, I got nominated for a Governor General Award, which was amazing. You know, I got a grant for working on another book that wasn't necessarily to do with my debut novel, but it was still really exciting. I sold a new book series. I got a brand new book deal. That was exciting. My publisher did such awesome things for me. They did that animated book cover. I got those Instagram stickers that are still so cool. I never get over how cool those are. My Canadian publisher also did like, it was so exciting to do like Canadian things with them and Canadian events. You know, things like Fold Festival that I've always thought are wonderful, like getting to participate in that. You know, I was in, I didn't mention this in my list of wins, but like Toronto Life is like one of my favorite magazines, and I got to do a little feature with them. That was really exciting. It's just like so much more good things happen than negative. And I felt like going into debut year, it was like people I felt so overwhelmed by the amount of negative things that people said to look forward to. It felt like the positive thing to look forward to was like, yay, you have a book out. And then there were like a million negative things that, you know, people were like, well, this is probably how things are going to go for you. And like, that's what I was kind of having to look forward to, which like on that basis, it's almost like, why even be excited to have your book come out at that point? And it was just like not at all my experience. Like I had such a wonderful positive experience. And that's not even me like making the best out of a bad situation, you know, like I had a shitty debut year and I'm like, well, I'll just cling to the happy things that happen. No, like a lot of great things happen, and I'm really fortunate and happy about those because that's not everyone's experience. You know, I do know other debut authors that had a really shitty experience, that had a lot of negative things happen to them. And so I just like, in the grand scheme of things, to me, those like down moments that I had when I was in the moment, yeah, it was shitty and it sucked and I felt bad. But they did not last very long. They just really didn't. And there was always something like good on the horizon. And so that's kind of like the basis of my reflection of my debut year. I really did have a great debut year, and I'm really looking forward to being a career author and having things going forward. And I think a big part of like what also helped my debut experience was that I sold another set of books early on, and so I was not living with the stress of like, oh my god, now I gotta put through my option, and what if they don't like it, and what happens now, and like, oh my gosh, the sales of my first book will now affect the sales of future books, because the books were different enough that I didn't need my first book sales. So yeah, things like that definitely created different experiences. But yeah, that was overall my experience. And I hope that you enjoyed hearing about it. But that is it for this final episode of Debut Diaries. I have had such a wonderful experience doing this series and sharing all of my experiences about debut year with you all. I will not be doing like a sophomore, junior, senior author diaries. This is really a one-time series. And if I have things that come up later, you know, as I have different experiences as a career author, I will happily share those on this channel, but I won't be doing any more series like this. But I hope that this has been like helpful to people watching. I hope this can be helpful to future debut authors that are watching or that come in the future and like maybe check out this series after the fact. But yeah, I just really appreciate you all being with me on this journey of debut year and this series. So if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe. And thank you so much for watching. Bye!